Now, what I want you to talk to us about is how we are to interact with the media when it comes to getting information about this conflict. And he's going to give us his insights as to what he's learned. And then I'm going to come and preach.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure for Ben to be invited to actually speak here this morning at DC. I'm used to speaking in various different places across the country, but it's always slightly different when you're speaking on home turf. For those who don't know me, I am a broadcast journalist with Revelation TV. I've been doing this for 16 years on a weekly basis. I produce and host a program called The Middle East Report that is about Israel and the Middle East, getting various different guests to share their own personal testimonies of how they came to faith from a Jewish background, or talking up on behalf of Christians who are persecuted in the Middle East, having representatives from the Israeli government or different NGOs and organizations to really give Israel's narrative and an understanding of what's happening today in the Middle East, but also how it relates to the Bible and Bible prophecy, because we are living in biblical times. And when we look at Israel, we see that this is where God's eyes are focused upon, because this is his nation and he's brought it back in fulfillment of biblical prophecy ever since the establishment of the modern state of Israel, which was on the 14th of May, 1948. I've been producing the Middle East Report since 2010, and I've never known a period of such great deception, media manipulation, lies being told by our government and lies being told by our mainstream media. And of course, this is all targeted against the only Jewish state in the world, which is the nation of Israel. I think it's important to understand the complexities of media, to understand the challenges that we face in understanding the times in which we're living in. So if you've got your Bibles with you, please turn to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9 and 12. And this describes very much the era in which we're living in. So it says here, "The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, and with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, they might be saved. And for this reason, God will send them a strong delusion, that they should believe the lie, that they all may be condemned who do not believe the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." And we also have to ask the question is, what is the media? Now, the media has various forms. We have print media, which is newspapers, books, magazines. We have television, we have radio, we have the internet, where you can read various news articles and news outlets. We have social media, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have X. So there's various different ways that we can all get our information. And this is what media is. It's a form of mass communication to educate, to either inform people about the news, or it's entertainment. And it's the media today in the 21st century that shapes people's opinions and attitudes, and also their behavior. It is the most powerful force in the world today. As we know, also living in something known as a 24/7 media news cycle now. And with our phones, we can get news almost instantly. So I want to make this a little bit interactive. It's always fun to explore how people consume their media. So if you get your media from reading a newspaper, please put up your hands. 1. How many of you consume your news from watching the mainstream media, such as news outlets such as the BBC, ITV, Sky, Channel 4? Put your hands up. Bit more? And how many of you would get your information from media news sites, such as online? A lot more. Okay, and a final one. How many also get your news from websites or news channels like YouTube and others on social media? a lot bigger. So this is how the age, the category of those who get news and then see how news is changing. It's important also to remember when it comes to news and information, when we use our brain, are we more intelligent now than we were, say, 30, 40, 50 years ago? Are we more informed? Are we more intelligent? And the answer to that question, no, I think we're dumber. We have the internet. We have news at our fingertips where we're able to search, go into Google, find a certain news item on that, what's behind that. So we have instant news at our fingers, but are we more intelligent? And the answer is no. And I'll tell you why. The reason is that if you take, for example, a newspaper, I'll take the Sunday Times, which I read on a Sunday. You read the newspaper, you are reading what is being written down, your brain will look at the information that's provided, and then it will absorb that information through your brain, through what you see with your eyes. Radio is also the same. So if you listen to a radio news broadcast, you listen to something, it goes through your ear, you process that with your mind, and then you come up with an idea of what they're actually discussing on that kind of radio chat show or news information. I think the same can work with podcasts as well. But when it comes to television, this is different. It's all about the eyes. Your eyes tell your brain what you see. And that's why television, that's why videos, this form of emotions can be displayed on our TV screens is the most powerful emotions because you see all of the emotions. And you are not thinking with your mind, you're thinking with your eyes. And your eyes tell you what you see. So when it comes to the situation facing Israel, we face that Israel is facing an unprecedented media bias or media war against her. And we saw this, for example, in October the 7th. And back in January of 2024, I actually had the privilege of seeing the sites in the south of Israel that were destroyed by Hamas on October the 7th. So we're talking about 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals murdered in cold blood. We are talking about between 5,000 and 6,000 injured, many of those critical, 251 taken back to Gaza as hostages. But on that day, there was somewhere a region between 3,000 Hamas terrorists and together with residents from Gaza took part in the biggest mass terrorist attack in Israel's history. Israel is still dealing with the shocks of that now. And of course, then 3 weeks later, at the end of October of 2023, Israel launched its military operations into Gaza to destroy the terror organization Hamas that was responsible for the biggest massacre of Jewish people since we've seen in the Holocaust 80 years ago. So it does a question of why are we seeing, when it comes to Israel, this kind of media bias, these lies put out by our mainstream media. And when we look at certain stuff, it's important to understand how, for example, Hamas as an Islamist terrorist organization use their weapon, and it's their weapon of choice. The reason is because our media is the underbelly of our democracy. It's the weakest part of our democracy. How do you influence government policy? You influence government policy through public opinion. Public opinion changes government policy, the results in change. So the whole strategy of Hamas in Gaza is to show innocent women and children, for example, saying that Gaza's on the verge of starvation, that Israel is committing war crimes, Israel's committing genocide. This is what we hear from our government, this is what we hear from our mainstream media, this is what we hear from BBC, ITV and Sky News without any verification whatsoever. And it's important to know that when you're looking at the news, you have to look at it in context, that Hamas is a genocidal terrorist organization who in their covenant charter, founding covenant charter back in 1987, called for the destruction of the modern state of Israel. So their goal is to eliminate the Jewish state and to murder Jewish people around the world. So we're seeing like a Nazi-esque ideology of Hamas. And this is how they're influencing the media. And this is why, for example, through influencing the media by saying, for example, back in only a few weeks ago, we had a young boy with cerebral palsy. And the media were holding up saying this boy is being starved because the aid is not getting through to him. And then it turns out, for example, through a good friend of mine who's a Jewish journalist called David Collier, found out that was a complete lie, that this boy who was 3 or 4 was not starving to death. He had cerebral palsy. His brother is fully healthy. His mum's fully healthy. And yet the media, the BBC, ITV, it was on the front page of The Guardian, front page of the Daily Express, says Israel is committing acts of starvation and then deliberately stopping aid from entering into Gaza. So we know that the consequences of this are horrific. Firstly, we're seeing an unprecedented rise in Jew hatred today, which is affecting Jewish communities in this country and across Europe. And if you're Jewish in this country or in Europe, it's not a safe place to be anymore, because Jewish people are being attacked. We only saw, for example, 2 Israelis were actually violently attacked at Center Parks just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. We've seen Orthodox Jewish family driving and having a family holiday in the Alps with their car sprayed Free Palestine. And essentially what we're seeing today is this hatred rising, the likes that we haven't seen since the 1930s and 40s with the rise of Nazism. And the reason is that Hamas use women and children as human shields. They would deliberately put women and children in the way of rockets and missiles. And I recently interviewed a very brave and courageous young evangelical Christian who volunteered to serve with the IDF in Gaza. And he said something extraordinary. He said that when we're in the first 4 months of the operation, we're in the north of Gaza, and we're telling the civilians in Gaza to move out of the territory, move to Rafah, where it's safe. And of course, war is horrific. No one wants to see war. No one wants to see destruction. And anyway, so a lot of these, the residents were asking, well, we're not going. So we have to go. This is a war zone. We're hunting Hamas and we're trying to look for Hamas. So then they said, can you give us an armed escort to Rafah in the south? Now, if this army, the Israeli army, is committing genocide, if it's committing crimes against humanity, why are these ordinary Palestinians then in Gaza asking for an armed escort? Which makes you think they're not committing genocide. They are not committing war crimes. The war crimes that were committed against Israel on October the 7th. I only have a few minutes, so I'm just going to bring this back to where we are now and why it's important to understand kind of media manipulation when we see it, because we're being lied to on a massive scale. Because the issue of Israel, the issue of Gaza, is a unifying issue for the Islamists to rally behind. Using this as a context to mobilize, to flex their political muscles and to flex political power. And currently we have a government that's in a line with the Islamists. It's known as the Red-Green Alliance, the hard left, with the Islamists in power because they want to destroy our Judeo-Christian heritage and everything we have. So in summing up, why is this important? Why is this all relevant to all of you here at DC this morning? Well, there's a number of different reasons. Firstly, that Israel and the Jewish people are family. We see that according to Ephesians chapter 2, we are grafted into the commonwealth of Israel, to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. When we read this book that's changed and shaped the course of history and our lives, nearly every character in this book that's mentioned, whether it's King David, whether it's Abraham, whether it's Yeshua HaMashiach, our Messiah, Jesus Christ, whether it's Paul the Apostle, whether it's disciples, were all Jewish. This is all focused on one single territory of land, known as the nation of Israel in the Middle East. And what we are seeing ever since 1948, 77 years ago, is seeing God's word come into fulfillment in the very days in which we're living in, where we are seeing Bible prophecy being fulfilled in our lifetime, which is absolutely extraordinary. So you want to prove the existence of God? You want to prove that God is working today? then just look at the nation of Israel and the miracles that are happening to bring the Jewish people from the four corners of the earth back into the nation of Israel, the rebirth of an ancient language that wasn't used for over 2,000 years, modern Hebrew. And then we combine that with an understanding of, when it comes to Israel, looking at where Israel is, we know that our Messiah, Jesus Christ, is not returning to Leatherhead, He's returning to Jerusalem. And where are we going to be ruling and reigning with him? Not in London, not in Washington, not in New York, but in Jerusalem. So this is relevant to all of us. This is relevant because this helps us understand the deception in which we're living in. And that's why we are living in extraordinary times, because literally we are seeing the Bible being fulfilled and come alive during our lifetimes. And there is a blessing. There is a blessing when churches and individuals stand with Israel and the Jewish people, because God gave that promise to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12, 1-3, that I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. Sadly, our nation looks like it's heading into the UN Security Council in a couple of weeks in New York, and will actually then choose to recognize a Palestinian state. In doing so, this goes against Joel chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, that talks about how God will bring the nations into the valley of Jehoshaphat for judgment, because they divided my land and scattered my people. They are not brought into judgment for their immorality. They are not brought into judgment for the sins those nations have committed, because they've come against the God of Israel. And that's why I think it's imperative that, as a famous Bible teacher once said, Lance Lambert, it's so important in the days in which we're living in to have a Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the others, because we're living in prophetic days. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, Ben. But it's important as a church and individuals that we pray and we stand for the Jewish people, because when we do, this opens up God's heart and his blessing upon us, and it's important that we stand in that gap, particularly at this unprecedented rise in Jew hatred that we have not seen since the 1930s and ended with the Holocaust. Now, I finish with this one single lesson from the Holocaust, that what starts with the Jewish people never finishes with the Jewish people. It consumes and destroys all societies and all nations, as we saw in the Second World War. 6 million Jewish lives were murdered on an industrial scale by the Nazis. But the worldwide casualty, we're looking at 80 million people, including combats and civilians. So the consequences of not standing up to Jew hatred are absolutely terrifying. And that is how God judges the nations, and this is what it means to him. So, thank you.